Okay, in After Effects 2022, what we're going to look at is playing around with lights. Very simply, just going to go through some ideas. We could play around with them, do a little bit of animation, and here we are. So what I've set up already is the word lights. So our graphic we have there, and we have a background. So just this light gray background we have. Okay, great. What I'm going to do right away, I'm just going to add a light. So layer, new, and light. And I'm going to scroll through these. So I'm going to start with a spotlight actually. Now it's going to name it what it is. So spotlight 1, this is a spotlight. Anything here, intensity, cone angle, cone feather, all these different things I can actually play with inside when I'm all set up. If I know exactly what I want, I can change it here, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to press OK. Now look what happened automatically. Now I've already had this set up before. If yours doesn't show up like this, what you could do is you could click on 2 views. Right now, obviously by default, it's 1 view. I can go to 2 views. And now I have my active camera right here, and I can see this is active. I have my little blue frame showing me that this is what I'm working on, so I can zoom in, zoom out. And if I click on this one, well, now this is the one I'm working on. This is active. I can zoom in and zoom out. And now this shows bottom. But what I want to see here is custom view 1. Now, right now I can't see anything, but there are some elements here. So what I need to do in order to see them in this view, I need to make them 3D. Now my spotlight appeared in the middle, so I'm going to bring it above. Great. So I'm going to make these 2 elements, lights and background, 3D. I need to click on this column here. Now if you don't see these are called switches. I can right click, go to columns, and turn on my switches. Alternatively, I can make sure that this is highlighted so I see my switches and my modes. So I'm just going to click on my 3D there. And now all of a sudden I can see the word lights. So let's zoom in a little bit. So these are my camera tools that'll help me change this camera angle so I can see a little bit better. So I'm going to click on my orbit. So my orbit tool first will just kind of let me move around in a certain way, which is great. But the light is interacting with it, making it kind of difficult to see. And this is my X and Y. I can move it around. And this is my Z, when I can just move in closer with my Z, just like that. Zoom in and now click and drag, click and drag. Now really, once again, I want to see my background too, so let me make that 3D. Well, now my background will be 3D, and I can see it in 3D space. It has to be 3D. Now if I click it off, it disappears, and I can make it 3D and change it. So that's how my light is interacting currently with my object, the word lights, and my background. So what I could play around with, let's take a quick peek at different things I could play. Now I transform. So for the spotlight, what I have here is I have a point of interest, which means it's very similar to a camera. I'm going to zoom in on this one here. That point of interest actually is this line. I'm going to move here. I'm going to click on it. And this is the point of interest. So what it's going to do with this spotlight, it's going to focus on that. That's going to be its main focus. So let's move. I can move it around. I could use the Z axis to move it in and out. I can move it up and down like that. All right. And then what's going to happen once I position it, once I change the position here, this point of interest is going to act as the pivot point for my position. So watch how it rotates around this point of interest. So if I change my Z, it goes in closer to the point of interest, and it moves away from the point of interest on the Z axis. Well, how about the Y? It's going to rotate around and pivot on that point of axis using the Y on the a vertical line, and the horizontal line, it's going to pivot this way using, once again, that point of interest. And once again, we're already kind of creating some different animations that we kind of see we can do something with, but let's go a little bit further. If I change up my orientation on the X, okay, so it's going to change the orientation on the X axis, just playing around there. Same with the Y, and same with the Z, which obviously won't do too much for us. It's just going to kind of control that light source. All right, and we have the X, Y, and Z rotation we could play around with too. Light options, so let's see what we can do. So light intensity, so we could go above 100% and really blow it out, make it a very large exposure, or kind of underexposed. We can go under that, so let's keep it back to 100. Color, I could change up the color. So if I change it up to say like a warmer color, warmer tone, I'll say like that. Well, it interacts with this actual object and the background. This is what I'm seeing right now. And the thing we can understand too, if I don't want the light to interact anymore, what I thought I potentially was just, it doesn't affect what's below it, but it does. Even though it's on here, it'll still affect if the other sources are below or wherever it is. That light is always on, so I can always just shut the light off if I don't want it. It goes back to normal. So just that's how we could work it there. But let's play around with this a little bit more. My cone angle, so if I want my cone angle to be larger, so I'm going to zoom out here so we can see a little bit better what's going on. My cone angle, I can change it, But I could also change my cone feather. So right now we have a really hard edge around there. Well, let's change that up. Let's fix that and drag this out, scrub it out, and now I have a nicer, much more feathered edge, which is much nicer in this particular situation to look at. My fall off of how it actually falls off the how my light interacts with the fall off of the object and the background. I could just say it's smooth, so it could have a different type of fall off. Inverse square clamp, let's see what that does. Okay, let's say none. All right, because I can really just control it with my cone feather, which is really nice. Change the radius, fall off distance, cast shadows. Well, what's cast shadows all about? I'm going to bring this back to white. And let's see what we can do with cast shadows. Well, what do I need in order to create a cast shadow? Well, I need a light, which I have. I have my light source. I need an object that's going to cast a shadow. Great, I have that. And I need a background in which the shadow will be cast. Well, I have to do something first. Well, number one, cast shadows on. Great. Number two, go to my lights and look on my actual object, whatever the object is, because now it's 3D, it gives me material options, and I can click on cast shadows on. Beautiful. And then I have to click on my background. And now my background also has to have my material options, and it has to be able to accept shadows, which is on. So my background is accepting shadows. My object, which just happens to be a type, my lights word, it's going to be able to cast a shadow. Great. But what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that the word light is directly on the background. So I just need to move that. And I'm just going to go to transform and change my Z position. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit, and what's going to start happening is a cast shadow is going to show up there. So now, depending on the intensity of my light and everything, which I'm going to change up here a little bit, let's change that. I'm going to be able to have a different type of cast shadow. So it could be darker, it could be lighter, all depending on my light and what I have set up here. So if I bring back my position, I'm going to bring it back this way. All right, so it's going to change the size of the cast shadow. It's going to do quite a bit there for us. Okay, so pretty interesting. And once again, I'm on full resolution, so this is exactly what we're seeing. So let me play around a little bit more with a few other spotlights, or a few other types of lights, not spotlights. So I have my cast shadows on. That's great. I'm going to shut this off. I'm going to make a new light. So I'm going to go through these and just to show us a little bit. I'm going to click on the parallel. So the parallel is kind of like the sun. It's just this massive light that's coming from very, very far away. But we have less control over it. The only things I could do with transform is change my point of interest, change my position, and only some light options. I don't have all the same light options I had before. But once again, if I change my point of interest, which happens to be here, which is great, I'm just going to actually move the position around. And it moves it in a pretty similar way to our spotlight, but once again, limited amount of change. But maybe you want something simple like this too, that's all we need. All right, let's continue to make another one, light, and let's add in our point. And okay, so there's our point. I'm going to make sure I shut these off because now I have a few different lights interacting. Remember, I got to shut those off, or I could have many light sources being used, and I can maybe show only I want this light source to be used from here to here, and then the next one from here to here. So I could have multiple light sources in a composition. All right, let's look at point light. One transform option and a few obviously light options as well. So the position change, once again, I can move it in and out, and how that interacts. I could change intensities, I could change all the normal stuff that we have seen before, but a little bit different. We don't have the cone, we don't have options like that. All right, one more layer, new light, and I'm going to click on ambient. Now ambient is kind of like this extra light just from, once again, far away. It just brightens up the whole scene in general. And once again, very few options here, light options. You don't even get an option to transform. It's just intensity and color. That's it, which is fine. It's just kind of an overall light for the whole scene, which I'm going to go back to spot, because what I want to do with spot now, I want to actually, let's do some animation. Let's play around. So let's do something very simple. A position change. Okay, so let's play around with our position. It's going to start here. Maybe I'll do this. I'll click on my stopwatch, create a keyframe, and I'm just going to play around. So remember that point of interest is where it pivots. So anything I do is going to pivot on that point of interest. So right now, if I zoom in to this one here, my point of interest, where are you? So I'm going to move this around. I'm going to bring it back so I see my point of interest is kind of on in the middle on the word. So I can rotate this, orbit this, just to see if I'm about right. Yep, it's right on there. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to do a quick little animation, and I'm just going to, let's do an X, and just move it that way. Great. Done. That's it. Something very simple. All right, nothing too fancy, just playing around. And then what I'll do from this point here is I'll zoom it out from there, and let's bring it back and really show it out. Blow it out there. Okay, great. Okay, that's it. Very simple, nice and easy. And there's a lot of motion we could do here, a lot of play we could have. And if you have a camera set up too, you can kind of play around with the lights, with the cameras, and create something really interesting here. And now with that cast shadow on too, which I don't have to have on, it creates also that other interest, some more motion happening. But once again, very subtle. I'm not going too crazy here with too much motion, just trying to create something interesting. So what I'll also do at the same time, let's play around with the intensity. So here's my intensity at this point, and let's say at this point it gets to something else. Let's bring it up, and maybe even this can become a transition into something else. So let's just blow it out. All right, and now what we could do with that, like I said, this could kind of become this big transition where I could now lead into another, situation, something else happening. So I'm just gonna kind of have that happen, and it slowly goes and it blows out the intensity to, whatever we want here, or I could obviously make it happen a lot quicker. Whatever the case is, but I am going to kill that, get rid of that. But that's the idea. We could play around with this quite a bit. I'm going to bring that back to 100. And then we could even, let's do one more. Let's play around with potentially having a cone angle of this. Cone angle, bring it out, and then we'll increase that cone angle. So that way, now we can have kind of this, opening, like something's happening here from nothing to something. All right. Now, even if I wanted to do something a little bit more, detective-like, I guess we could say, I'm going to shut this one off. I'm going to bring in a new one, new light, and it's still going to be a spotlight. Say okay, and it's going to be very focused here, which is great. And let me do something like I'm just going to move it around, bring it back over here, and I will do a, bring in that cone a little bit more. Maybe even diffuse it a little bit too. So feather that out just a little bit. Okay. So I can kind of move it around as if I was, a detective looking at something here. It'll start in one spot and go to another spot and to another. So let me do some position changes. So right about here, I'm going to move it. Let's change our point of interest. To up here. Bring in my camera, and actually no, I'm going to bring my point of interest down, because what I'll do is I'll have it just kind of scrub through here. That's what I'll do, and then I can have this move to here. No, what I want to change is that point of interest. That's what I'll change. So bring it back over here. I'll change both actually at the same time. There I go. Bring it over. So I'm going to change my point of interest to here. Kind of swipes through. And maybe at this point as well, I back up. Let's just see what that does. All right, so kind of an interesting option there we could play around with, and continue to work with that. And maybe at some point I want to say, okay, my cone angle is here, and then now at this point it's going to really increase so I could see more. And there is that. And then maybe even at this point I change my point of interest to kind of come back to center. All right. So number one, let's bring all these in a little bit more so they go a little quicker. All right. And we could add some easy ease if we want to, not necessary. Just playing around and seeing some different things we could do here. All right. Nice. Now the last thing I want to do, I want to show you a light effect. So effect that's set up there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this, and I want to actually add some color to it. So I'm going to just Command D, lights, and I'm going to shut this off, and I'm going to give it some color. So let me just duplicate that, or sorry, double click on that, change the color to, say, let's red. Doesn't really matter, just playing around. Ooh, that's pretty intense. There we go. And now I'm just going to do a sweep. So I'm going to type in light into my effects. And what I wanted to do, I want to do a light wipe, a strobe light, a light sweep. So CC light sweep. So I'm just going to click on that. And I'm actually going to apply it to the actual layer that I wanted to apply to. And right away, it's affected. It's right there. And let me now change this background to a darker background. Just going to, no, I can't double click on that. That's okay. I'm just going to go to back here. I'm going to go to layer and new, and sorry, solid settings. And I'm just going to make it black. So we have it a little bit more intense, and we can see that light a little bit more. So let's play around. So I click on lights, and my effects are up here, or I could also see my effects right here. There's my effects, CC light sweep, and let's see what we can do. So number one, the animation is going to be the center animation. We're going to kind of move that light. It's going to go across. Okay. So let me actually make the animation first, and then we can see what we can do and change up how it interacts with that word. So what I have here is my center is going to be all the way over here as if nothing, and I'm going to make my keyframe there. So click on my stopwatch, and then I'm just going to move it over, and I'm going to bring my X over to all the way over here, and even get rid of it. There we go. There's my light sweep done. Pretty nice, pretty easy, better than having to kind of make it manually. So in the meantime, while it's there, let's play around with some of these options. So direction, well, I could change up the angle of it. So right now it's at a 90-degree angle or at 0-degree angle. However I want to play with that. But as obviously I'd have to change up the centering of my Y or my X to make it work a little bit better. So let's go a 0-degree. So it's just perfectly straight up and down. The shape. So right now it's sharp. If I went smooth, it kind of will change up the how the light actually affects if it's sharper there, but actually now it's spread out a little bit more. And then I have my width, so I can play with my width and make it much wider or much more narrow. Sweep intensity. Okay, so we can make it more intense, that light. Edge intensity, let's see what that does. So the edges is going to interact with the edges a little bit more there. Light color, I could change the color of the light. Let's do that again, something like that to make it stand out even more. Light perception, so add or composite, I'm just going to leave it as is. Composition options, I'm going to leave it as is. And that's it, just kind of playing around with that and seeing what that does. Pretty cool. Pretty interesting what we do there. And once again, just playing around with lights. Just wanted to show you a little bit more how lights work and potentially some fun animation options, playing around with some cast shadows. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into how lights work.